My son gave me an empty savings passbook for my birthday. Tucked inside was a card. You have nothing left to leave us, and we have no reason left to keep you. My name is Aurelia Quinn, and this is the story of how I went from an invisible mother to the nightmare in their will. If you have ever felt pushed out of your own family or watched a mother be treated like a burden, leave a comment. I'm not telling this story for pity. I'm telling it so that people like me know you are not alone. And if you want to know what I did after receiving that birthday gift, keep reading. Because every storm has a breaking point. I used to think the worst night of my life was when Silas died in the hospital. His heart stopped at 3:12 a.m., and I just sat there, my hand still clutching a Bible, unable to close my eyes. But no, that wasn't the moment I felt like I had vanished from the world. That moment happened on my 68th birthday, in a spotless, spacious house that was once mine and then suddenly wasn't. I walked into Caleb's house at exactly 7:00 p.m., just as he'd asked during our phone call 3 days prior. He said they were having a small dinner to celebrate my birthday. Nothing fancy, Mom, he'd instructed. I had nodded, though no one on the other end of the line could see. Vanessa, his wife, opened the door. She smiled, but she didn't look at me. She never looked me in the eye. "Oh, you're here," she said, turning away immediately. No hug, no eye contact. I was just another appointment in their busy schedule. The house was cold in the way only houses that are too clean and too quiet can be. White, glossy, empty. Not a single family photo on the walls. No wedding pictures. No photos of a chubby-cheeked Jonas or a younger Talia cradling a doll. I knew because I had secretly looked around every time I visited, and every time I was met with the same disappointment. Talia was at the dining table, her head buried in her phone. She didn't look up, didn't say a word, not even a hello. I didn't blame her. She was young, but it still stung a little. I remembered her sitting on my lap, begging me to read Sleeping Beauty every Friday night. Once she'd said, "I wish you were my mommy." She was only 4 then. Jonas was leaning against the kitchen doorway. He was quiet, unlike his sister. His eyes met mine. I saw it clearly. The look of someone who still remembered I was part of the family portrait. But he didn't say anything. He just lowered his head and turned back toward the kitchen. Caleb emerged from his home office, still in his dress shirt, phone in hand. He gave me a quick, fleeting kiss on the cheek. "How are you, Mom?" "I'm all right," I replied. "Come have a seat." Vanessa made a kale salad and some flaxseed crackers. "You'll love it." I knew I wouldn't. I'd never been able to stomach kale, but I smiled. The meal was awkward. I asked Talia about her acting class. She didn't answer. Vanessa said she's in her introverted phase. Don't push her, please. I turned to Caleb and asked about his job at the insurance firm. He shrugged. Same old. They're downsizing. It's exhausting, Mom. I was about to tell him about the time Silas lost his job and we ate canned beans for a week. But Caleb cut me off. Dad's been gone for 10 years, Mom. You need to live in the present. I fell silent. The words hit me like a hammer to the chest. Vanessa placed a plate of the green salad in front of me. You need to cut back on protein at your age. I read it online. I nodded. No one had asked me what I wanted to eat. Then came the cake. It was a store-bought strawberry mousse cake, beautiful but cold as ice. Not the kind I liked, and certainly not the kind I used to bake for Caleb's birthday every year. No one mentioned the cheesecake I had brought in a glass carrier, which sat untouched on the kitchen counter where I'd placed it when I arrived. Caleb stood up, holding a silver gray gift box, and handed it to me. Here's your present. We all picked it out. I was stunned. I hadn't expected much. A card, a picture frame, a pair of woolen gloves, anything would have been nice. But a gift box still sparked a flicker of hope in my heart. I opened it. Inside was a savings passbook, pale blue and completely empty. There were no numbers, No name, no signature, no value, just a small, folded piece of paper clipped inside. I unfolded it. Everything you have to leave behind is as empty as this book. I didn't understand at first, or maybe I didn't want to. Vanessa was the first to laugh. Talia followed her laughter so loud she rolled onto the sofa. Caleb clapped me on the shoulder. "It's just a joke, Mom. Don't take everything so seriously." A joke. I sat there, my hands still holding the empty passbook, my eyes glued to the words. No one touched my shoulder. No one asked if I was okay. I didn't cry. I couldn't, but I heard something snap inside my chest. A quiet, penal tear. I looked up. Jonas was standing at the end of the table. His hand was under the tablecloth, twitching slightly. A small blue light flickered from his sleeve. He was recording, but his eyes were locked on mine, unblinking, as if he were apologizing with his gaze alone. I said nothing. I placed the passbook on the table. I put a forkful of kale salad on my plate, and I ate in silence. 3 days before it all happened, I got a call from Caleb at 10:13 a.m. I remember the time precisely because I was folding napkins in the kitchen and the wall clock had made its familiar click just before the phone rang. Usually morning calls were from the medical center, the pharmacy, or a bank representative trying to sell me a senior-friendly savings account. But this time it was Caleb. I froze for a moment when his name appeared on the screen. Not because it was a surprise Caleb still called occasionally, when he needed old account information, property deeds, or sometimes just to scold me for forgetting to turn off the heater when I was watching Jonas at his house. But this time his voice was different, softer without its usual hurried tone. "Friday night, 7 p.m., come over to our place, Mom. Just a small dinner for your birthday." I didn't answer right away. I must have been silent for so long that Caleb had to ask Mom. "Are you still there?" I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Then I said, my voice barely a whisper, "Yes, I'll be there." After hanging up, I sat motionless on the wooden kitchen chair for nearly 10 minutes, the yellow napkin still half folded in my hands. My hands were trembling, not from arthritis, but from something deeper, something close to what people call emotion, the feeling of being remembered, of being seen, for the first time in a very long time. I stood up, walked straight to the living room, and opened the paper wall calendar, the kind with pictures of the Colorado mountains that the pharmacy gives out every year. I scribbled in the box for Friday birthday. They remembered. I thought maybe it wasn't them, maybe it was Vanessa's idea, or Jonas's. But I wrote it anyway as a way of affirming to myself that this birthday wouldn't be like the last. Last year, Caleb had sent a "Happy Birthday, Mom" text at 11 p.m. Talia sent nothing. Jonas sent a birthday cake sticker on Messenger, but I wasn't sure if it was him or if his mother had reminded him. I decided to dye my hair. Not because I wanted to look younger, I wasn't delusional, but because I wanted to look in the mirror and see a woman who had made an effort. I booked an appointment at Lily's Hair, 5 blocks from my house. Lily was Korean petite, quick-handed, and a woman of few words. I told her I'd like a silver with ash undertones. Keep some of the gray, but not dull. She nodded and worked with a gentle touch. When she was done, I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look younger, but I definitely looked less tired, as if I had just wiped the dust off an old photograph. I remembered Silas used to say I looked beautiful in ocean blue. He said it made my eyes look brighter. That evening, I rummaged through my closet and pulled out a blue blouse I hadn't worn since last year. I ironed it until it was perfectly smooth. I buttoned it up one by one and tried it on in front of the mirror. I probably looked ridiculous, an old woman primping like a girl before her first date. But I didn't feel ashamed. I just felt nervous. The next morning I started making a cheesecake, a classic New York style, the same recipe I'd used since Caleb was in elementary school. I remembered how the neighborhood kids would run over when they smelled it baking. I used a small round pan, enough for 4 or 5 if sliced thin. I wrote each of their names in chocolate sauce: Caleb, Vanessa, Talia, Jonas. I was about to add Mom for my own slice, but then I stopped. I left it blank. As I put the cake in the fridge, I opened a drawer and saw the dog-rearing guide I had printed out 3 months ago. I had thought about getting a miniature schnauzer. I remember telling Caleb about it. He dismissed it instantly. "Don't be so dramatic at your age, Mom. Getting a dog is something lonely widows do on TV. You need something more practical like life insurance." I folded the guide and put it back in the drawer. That afternoon I had planned to get a back massage. I had a coupon from a junk mail flyer, only $40 for a session for seniors over 65. But after doing the math, I decided to cancel. I wanted to save the money to buy a new tablecloth for the birthday dinner. Mine was old, the edges slightly frayed. I chose a cream-colored one with an oak leaf embroidery because Vanessa liked simple designs. That night, as I ate soup alone in my kitchen, I remembered my last birthday with Silas. He had given me a handwritten letter, his script round and neat. "Without you, this house is just an empty frame." I had folded that letter and tucked it inside my baking book. The book is yellowed now, but the letter is still there. I took it out and read it again. Then I placed a hand over my chest. I felt alive, whole, even if a little worn. 3 days, only 3 more days. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe just this once I would see a look of love from the very people to whom I had given my entire life. I didn't know I was preparing for a farewell party, not for my old age, but for the last illusion I had left. I stood at my son's front door at 6:55 p.m. The evening was cool, with just enough of a breeze to make the hem of my blue blouse flutter against my hip. I took a deep breath, my hands steady on the cheesecake carrier. On top of the cake, I had carefully written each name in chocolate sauce: Caleb, Vanessa, Talia, Jonas. I had practiced my lettering 3 times to make sure it wasn't shaky. The door opened. Vanessa appeared in a form-fitting beige dress, her hair in a neat bun, her lips a shade of brownish red. She smiled the kind of smile I'd seen on insurance agents, perfectly measured and distant. "Oh, you're here, Mom," she said, her voice flat, neither high nor low. No hug, no hand on my back to guide me in. She just stepped aside. I walked in the heels of my shoes, clicking softly on the polished wood floor. The house was exactly as I remembered, pristine white, everything looking as if it had just been cleaned by a commercial service. The air smelled of lemon disinfectant and new particle board. No family photos, no wedding portraits, no picture of Caleb's graduation, no framed shot of a grandfather holding Jonas as a toddler. It was as empty as a model home. Talia was at the dining table, her head glued to her phone, her thumb endlessly scrolling. I smiled a greeting, but she didn't look up, nor did she say anything. Maybe she didn't hear, or maybe she heard, but couldn't be bothered to react. Jonas emerged from the kitchen. His eyes met mine. There was a flicker of light in them, the same look he had as a little boy sneaking an extra piece of cake I'd told him to save for later. He started to walk toward me to say something, then stopped. I heard Vanessa's voice from the kitchen. Jonas finished setting the table. He obediently turned back. Caleb came down from the 2nd floor. White dress shirt hair, perfectly combed, walking with the confidence of someone heading into a board meeting. He gave me a perfunctory hug, the kind that only involves the shoulders and has no time to linger. "How are you, Mom?" "I'm fine," I replied. "Come to the table. Vanessa prepared a few things you'll love." I walked to the dining table. A light gray tablecloth, white plates, silverware lined up in perfect rows. Everything was perfect in Vanessa's way, neat cold, not a single fork out of place, not an extra bowl in sight. In the center of the table was a platter of kale salad, flaxseed crackers, red bean soup, and cucumber juice. No wine, no meat. Nothing that had ever appeared at our family dinners when Silas was alive. I asked Jonas, "Are you still swimming? I heard you were thinking of competing last summer." Before he could open his mouth, Caleb interjected, "He quit, Mom. His grades weren't good enough. He needs to focus on his studies." I nodded. I didn't press, even though I knew Jonas loved swimming as much as Caleb had once loved playing the guitar, which Caleb had given up when Vanessa complained it was unnecessary noise. I took a bite of salad and chewed slowly. It was hard to swallow. Cale had never agreed with me, bitter tough, and a reminder that I was too old to acquire new tastes. I tried to compliment the crackers. Are there almonds in these?" "They're quite interesting." Vanessa gave a small laugh, but it had a twist to it like a jab. "Funny. I thought you said you couldn't eat hard nuts." "Or has your palate changed with age?" I forced a laugh in return. It felt cold and thin. I had nothing left to say. After dinner, everyone cleared the table. I walked to the kitchen, took the cheesecake out of the bottom shelf of the fridge, and was just opening the lid when Vanessa said loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Oh, you brought a cake. Mom Talia's cutting back on sugar, and Caleb has to watch his cholesterol. Maybe we'll just leave it for now, have it some other time." I nodded. I placed the cake, the one with their names written on it, on the counter. No one touched it. Caleb clapped his hands together. Time for presents. Talia handed me a box wrapped in silver foil with a light blue bow. It was beautiful. I thanked her and started to untie the ribbon. But Jonas suddenly stood up, flustered. "Grandma, let me get the cake. Just wait a second." I looked at him, my hands still on the box. "It's okay, dear. This will only take a moment." I lifted the lid. Inside was a savings passbook, an old one, the kind banks don't issue anymore. I turned the first page, blank. The second page, blank. No name, no balance, nothing. A piece of paper was clipped between the pages. I opened it. It was Caleb's handwriting, as neat as a college application letter. "Everything you have to leave behind is as empty as this book." I heard Talia giggle. Vanessa laughed out loud, then cleared her throat as if to cover it up. Caleb patted my shoulder. "It was just a joke, Mom. You get it, right?" Oh, I got it. I understood completely. I looked at the passbook in my hands, feeling as if I had been wrung dry. Not because the book was empty, but because of the smiles on their faces as they gave it to me. A quiet, smug satisfaction, as if they had finally said what they'd been thinking for so long without having to hide it anymore. I placed the passbook back in the box and closed the lid. No one asked me how I felt. No one looked me in the eye. No one mentioned the cake I'd brought. I stayed for another 15 minutes listening to them talk about work yoga classes and summer plans. I didn't speak. I couldn't eat another bite. My throat was tight as if it were coated in dry flour. When I got home, I changed my clothes, took down my hair, and looked at myself in the mirror. I took off the blue blouse, folded it carefully, and hung it back up. I sat on my bed and turned on the nightstand lamp. Then I whispered almost inaudibly, "It was just a joke." But I knew the truth, no one was joking here. I didn't know the video had been recorded. I hadn't seen the phone in Jonas's hand that night. Hadn't noticed the angle, hadn't heard the camera turn on. But somehow he had known, or at least sensed, that what happened at that dinner table wasn't something that should be buried under the phrase, "It was just a joke." I only found out about the video 3 days later on a Monday morning. I was sitting in my kitchen reviewing a list of things I planned to donate to the nearby nursing home: old books, some wool blankets, and unused wooden picture frames. On the table was a cold cup of chamomile tea and a slice of buttered toast I hadn't finished. Then the landline rang. I don't usually answer unknown numbers, but that morning I felt too empty to care. "Hello, is this Aurelia Quinn?" "Yes, this is she. My name is Ashley, a reporter from the Morning Ledger. I wanted to ask you about a video that's gone viral recently concerning your birthday party. Would you be willing to share your story?" I was stunned, silent for a few seconds. "What video, The one titled Empty Ledger A Birthday No One Should Experience. It was posted yesterday on a YouTube channel called Justice Unfiltered. As of now, it has over 2 million views and you're the main subject. I didn't say anything for a moment. I felt my hands begin to tremble. I have nothing to say, I replied. I don't want to be famous. I just want to stop being treated like an object. I hung up and stood from my chair, disoriented. I went to the bedroom, grabbed my coat, and left the house forgetting my keys. I walked around the neighborhood, past the auto repair shop, past Mrs. Johnson's little coffee house, and then circled back. I didn't buy anything. I didn't greet anyone. I just walked, letting the morning sun burn away some of the shame. That evening, I opened my laptop, the old machine I only used for reading the news and looking up recipes. I typed Empty Ledger birthday video. It was the first result. I clicked it. The video opened on the familiar scene: kale salad, flaxseed crackers, the sterile white light. Then I saw myself, my face slightly blurred from being filmed secretly from under the table. I saw my hands opening the gift box, my fingers trembling as I turned the blank pages of the Passbook. Then the moment I read the note, the word blown up in subtitles by whoever posted it. Everything you have to leave behind is as empty as this book. The laughter, crystal clear. Vanessa's, then Talia's. Caleb's hand on my shoulder, his voice light and dismissive. It's just a joke, Mom. You get it right. And then the internet got it too. Below the video were thousands of comments. This is why I don't go home for Thanksgiving. No mother deserves to be treated like this, no matter what mistakes she's made. It's the way they laughed that's so horrifying. The Passbook wasn't the only empty thing in that house, so were their hearts. The hashtag #EmptyLedger started trending. Someone on TikTok even edited clips from my video to a sad piano song. It got over 500,000 likes. I closed the laptop after 10 minutes, unable to watch anymore. I didn't know what to feel. Shame, anger, or soft relief. All I knew was someone had seen. Someone hadn't looked away like my family always did. Someone somewhere saw that I was still a person. 2 days later, Caleb called Jonas into his room. I knew because I happened to be at their house. Vanessa had called me over to discuss some paperwork that needs your signature. In reality, they just needed a babysitter for the afternoon. Talia was out with friends. Vanessa was at work. Caleb had a Zoom meeting. Jonas went upstairs when his father called. 15 minutes later, he came back down. His eyes were red. He said nothing. He didn't look at me. That evening, as I was washing dishes in the kitchen, Jonas came over and picked up a towel to dry. I looked at him and asked softly, "Are you okay?" He just nodded. He didn't speak. But his hands were shaking, and his eyes said everything. A week later, while the video was still making its rounds, Vanessa showed up at my house. She didn't call first. She just stood on my doorstep, her expression a mixture of anger and sorrow. "Mom, did you send them that video?" I looked at her, then turned away to get the teapot. I didn't invite her to sit. I didn't have to anymore. "I don't know how to record a video," I said, pouring tea into a porcelain cup with a daisy print. "But I know what it feels like to be humiliated." Vanessa stood frozen. There was nothing left to say. Eventually she left, leaving the door ajar. That night I received a text message, not from Caleb, not from Vanessa. It was from Jonas. Just one line. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do. But I knew you didn't deserve that." I read it over and over. Then I turned off the light. But I didn't turn off my phone. For the first time in a long time, I slept on my back instead of curled on my side. I slept with my spine straight, as if something inside it had just been set right. I didn't know Dorothy was coming that afternoon. She hadn't called, hadn't texted. I was in the kitchen rewashing a tablecloth I'd spilled fish sauce on the day before when the doorbell rang. Peeking through the slit in the curtains, I saw her signature messy white hair and the thick moss-green coat she wore year-round, regardless of the season. I opened the door. Dorothy said nothing. She handed me a small brown paper package tied with twine, then walked in as if she owned the place. "Walnut bread," she said. "I knew you wouldn't be cooking for yourself today." I didn't argue. I didn't need to. I set the bread on the table and hugged her. It wasn't a light shoulder pat hug like Caleb's. It was a full, proper hug, our hunched backs pressing against each other, hands resting on opposite shoulders. It wasn't long, it wasn't short. It lasted just long enough for two people who had run out of words. Dorothy sat down in the chair next to mine and poured tea from the pot. I sat across from her, making no effort to smile. We had known each other for over 30 years, back when I was a high school math teacher and she was the school librarian. We weren't the kind of friends who texted every day, but the kind where if I died in my sleep one night, she would be the only one to come looking for me. "I saw the video," Dorothy said, stirring her tea. "Yeah," I replied. "You looked so small at that table. I'm the same size. The lighting just made things clearer." We sat in silence for a moment. "My daughter still hasn't called," she continued. "Shelley." "Yep. It's been 2 years. Not since I refused to loan her money for a second house." "Did you tell her why I told her I wasn't going to die broke, just so she could live out her dream?" She texted back one sentence, "You're selfish." Then she cut me off. "I'm sorry. Don't be." "Sometimes." She took a sip of tea. Having children was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I didn't know how to respond, but I felt my heart soften, not out of pity for her, but because I understood that feeling all too well. When the very person you helped stand on their own 2 feet is the first one to push you down. We ate half the loaf of bread. I wasn't hungry, but I ate. Dorothy always baked as if she were offering comfort. The crust was crisp, the walnut filling rich, but not too sweet, with a satisfying crunch. She looked at me and said, "You can't let this go. You need proof. You need to fight back." I looked at her silent. Something in her voice reminded me of Silas, direct, unflinching, devoid of pity. Dorothy pulled a small black object from her purse no bigger than her fist. It had 2 buttons, record and stop. Digital recorder. It's hidden in a keychain. My son bought it for me, and now I use it to record my doctor's appointments just in case. But you could use it for something else. I took it. It was light, cold. I asked, "What if they find out? Don't let them." I called Caleb the next morning. I pitched my voice low and a little hoarse as if I were remorseful. "I feel terrible. I was a little sensitive the other day." "Could I come over to apologize?" Caleb agreed immediately, a hint of surprise in his voice. "Come for dinner tonight. Vanessa will be home too." I agreed, but this time I didn't bring a cake. I attached the device to my car keychain. I pressed the record button as I got out of the car. I was trembling slightly, but not from fear. It was because for the first time in years I felt like I was doing something for myself. The house was the same. White, clean, not a single picture frame. Vanessa opened the door, her smile stretched tight, her perfume too sweet and cloying. "Oh, you're here, Mom. Come in." Dinner was steamed cauliflower chia seed toast and salad. I ate just enough to avoid questions. Jonas wasn't there. He'd been sent to a friend's house to give the adults some space to talk. We finished eating. Caleb poured tea. "So what did you want to say, Mom? I'm sorry. I overreacted. I know you all didn't mean any harm." Vanessa glanced at Caleb, then turned to me. "Well, we might have been a little harsh, but you should also understand at your age you need to simplify your life." I remained silent. Caleb continued, "And you know whenever you call I have to pick up, pretend to be interested. It's always, 'How are you? How's work? Is Talia doing well in school?' Do you think that's easy to listen to year after year?" I felt my hand tighten around the teacup, but I said nothing. Vanessa added, her voice even and steady, "I told you your mother was toxic. I only put up with it for the sake of the family. Everything revolves around her, and we're always the ones at fault. I finished my tea and set the cup down. I understand, I said. You do? Caleb asked, more clearly than ever. That night I went home and put my keys on the table. I removed the device, I pressed stop, I sat on the sofa leaning back against the old cushions. I played the recording. My voice was shaky at first, then grew steady. Caleb's voice was crystal clear. Vanessa's was as sharp as a nail scratching glass. When the recording ended, I turned it off. Dorothy was sitting beside me. She didn't ask any questions. I turned to look at her. I think I said slowly, "It's time to rewrite my will." Dorothy didn't reply, but she nodded. Her eyes never left my face. I always thought life after 65 would be quiet mornings with mint tea, half-read books, and the occasional ache in my knees when a cold front moved in. But no, what I had was an audio file of curses from the very child I had helped take his first steps, and a plan. I put the USB drive with the recording in my coat pocket, along with a thick file of documents held together by a brown rubber band. Then I walked 4 blocks to the bus stop. I didn't drive anymore. Not because I couldn't, but because I was no longer in a hurry to get anywhere. Emery Blake's law office was in an old 3-story red brick building behind the city library. I chose him not because he was famous, but because he was the one who had helped my husband Silas draft his will 11 years ago. Emery had a voice like aged wood, deep, steady, and non-judgmental. I needed someone like that. Aurelia. I was so sorry to hear about what happened, he said, pouring me a glass of water. No need to be sorry, I replied. I didn't come here for comfort. I handed him the file. Each section was clearly labeled in my own handwriting: the house on Raymond Street, the Vanguard investment account, the renewable energy stocks, the plot of land by Stillwater Lake, the land where Silas had dreamed of building a cabin for the grandkids to visit in the summer. I want to rewrite my will, all of it. Aurelia, are you sure? Your estate is worth nearly $3 million. This isn't a decision to be taken lightly. I'm not taking it lightly, Emery. I have sat with my shame long enough to understand the value of decisiveness. I pulled the USB drive from my coat pocket and placed it on his desk. You should listen to this before you write anything down. He plugged it into his computer. We listened together in silence. Caleb's voice rang out clear as day. What's the point of her living so long? Every time she calls, I have to pretend to care. Vanessa's voice followed, colder than winter. I told you your mother was toxic. I'm only putting up with this for the sake of the family. When the recording finished, Emery took off his glasses and wiped his forehead. Do you want to make this public? I picked up my glass and took a sip of water. No. I don't need the world to know who they are. I just need them to see the monster they created. He nodded. So who do you want to leave it to? I took a handwritten piece of paper from my purse and placed it on the table. It was written out clearly, 40% of the estate to Jonas Quinn, grandson. Note attached. My grandson was the only one in that house who held on to the light of his own humanity. The remaining 60% to be divided equally among 3 beneficiaries. The Silas Quinn Memorial Scholarship for engineering students who have lost a parent. The Lakewood City Library, where I used to donate books every year. The Old Soul Shelter, a sanctuary for elderly and infirm animals, where I adopted 2 cats after Silas passed. Emery read it over, then asked, "Any special provisions?" I looked him straight in the eye. Add a disinheritance clause. Anyone, Caleb, Vanessa, or Talia, who contests or challenges this shall be permanently and irrevocably barred from any related claim. Done. That's legally sound. I handed him another piece of paper, a handwritten letter. This is a letter to be found should I disappear suddenly. It contains my thanks, my reasons for leaving the money to Jonas, and information about the funds. Nothing extreme. "What are you planning, Aurelia? I'm not planning anything. I'm just planning to leave without having to explain myself to people who don't deserve an explanation." Emery said nothing. He folded the letter and carefully placed it in an envelope. Before leaving his office, I asked, "I'll need to be certified as mentally competent, won't I?" "Yes. I'll arrange for an independent medical evaluation, both neurological and cognitive. We'll need that on file before the final notarization." "But you seem more clear-headed than any client I've ever had," I smiled. "My clarity is the last thing I have left." That evening I was home when Jonas called. Not from his own phone, but from a payphone behind the library. I could hear the sirens in the background. "Grandma." "Yes, I'm here. They're making me delete everything. My accounts, TikTok, Reddit, my email. Mom says I'm a media liability. They've been questioning me non-stop." I could hear Jonas's ragged breathing as he tried to stay calm. "Are you okay? I'm fine. But I hate feeling like I'm the one at fault for telling the truth." I closed my eyes. My heart clenched a mix of pain and warmth. "You did nothing wrong, Jonas. The ones who are wrong are those who create a world where you have to hide your goodness." After a moment, Jonas said, his voice barely a whisper, "If you ever leave, don't say anything. Just leave a note. That will be enough for me." I sat in the kitchen for a long time after my hand around a cold cup of tea. Outside the window, yellow leaves swirled in the wind, gathering in piles on the steps. I thought about the house by Stillwater Lake. Silas had wanted to build a small cabin there. I had dismissed it as impractical. Now I thought, there would be no cabin. But maybe from its ashes I could build the rest of my life neat, quiet, and with no one allowed to tear it down ever again. I didn't sleep much the night before. Not from anxiety or anticipation, but because I needed absolute clarity. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. and made black coffee, no sugar, just as I used to when I was still teaching. Sitting in the kitchen, I looked at the white tablecloth I hadn't used in years, then gently folded it and put it away in a drawer. Today, I was not a mother. I was not a grandmother. I was a witness to my own life, and I was bringing the indictment. Emery Blake called to confirm at 9:00 a.m. "Everything is ready, Aurelia. They've all received the summons. They'll be here at 10:30. I wore a long gray dress and a simple black hair clip. No makeup, no jewelry. I carried only a thick envelope in my hand containing the final will neatly typed, signed and sealed by Emery. Jonas met me at the end of the street. He didn't say a word, just stood there in an old charcoal gray hoodie, his hands in his pockets. I got in the car and he drove off, still silent. We didn't need words. I just placed my hand on his as light as a period at the end of a sentence. The law office was on the second floor of the red brick building. The day was bright, but inside me, everything was a uniform shade of gray. When I walked into the conference room, I saw Vanessa was already seated, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone with an impatient sigh. Talia sat next to her mother, her face tense. Caleb stood by the window, his back to the room, as if something far beyond the glass were his only real concern. Emery greeted me with a nod and then motioned for everyone to be seated. We are gathered here today for the reading of Aurelia Quinn's revised last will and testament. Present are legal counsel, a notary public, and a video camera for the legal record. I pulled out a chair and sat down. Jonas sat to my right. He remained silent. I placed the envelope on the table. Before Emery reads the will, I have something to say. The room fell quiet. I didn't look at anyone, just stared into Emery's eyes, as if I were looking at myself 10 years ago when I was still full of hope. I don't need you to love me. I stopped expecting that a long time ago. But I need you to remember. Remember this moment. The moment when everything you thought would be yours vanished. This is not revenge. I am simply giving each of you back exactly what you gave me. I nodded. Emery pressed a button on a remote. The recording began to play. Caleb's cold voice filled the room. What's the point of her living so long? Every time she calls, I have to pretend to care. Vanessa's voice followed sharp and clear. I told you your mother was toxic. I'm only putting up with this for the sake of the family. No one spoke for the first 30 seconds. Then Vanessa shot to her feet, her voice trembling. That's a fake. It's been doctored. It can't be. Emery held up a hand. This recording has been authenticated. It is unedited. We have the timestamps, the original device, and a clear voice match. Caleb slammed his hand on the table. This is illegal. We have grounds to sue. Talia began to cry. Not sobbing, but silently, tears streaming down her red, blotchy face. She bowed her head and whispered, I just went along with it. Jonas sat perfectly still, but I saw his hand clench the hem of his hoodie. He was trying to hold himself together in the middle of an earthquake. Emery opened the envelope and took out the will. As per the wishes of Mrs. Aurelia Quinn, I will now read the legal distribution of her assets effective as of the date of signing. He began to read. I didn't listen to every word. I had already memorized every line. All inheritance rights of Caleb Quinn, Vabo, revoked. Vanessa's name did not appear in any clause. Talia, not mentioned. Not hated, but not trusted. Jonas, 40% of the entire estate, including all account stocks, and the land by Stillwater Lake. The remaining 60% divided equally among 3 entities. The Silas Quinn Memorial Engineering Scholarship, the Lakewood City Library, the Old Soul Animal Shelter. Emery looked up, his eyes scanning the room. I will now read the final passage in Mrs. Aurelia Quinn's own words. He unfolded a separate sheet of paper and read slowly. I am not abandoning my family. My family buried me alive. I am simply the one who refused to lie still. No one spoke. For a very long time. Caleb was the first to stand. Let's go, he said through clenched teeth. This is a farce. Vanessa followed silently without a backward glance. Talia stood slowly, her eyes still wet. As she passed me, she paused for a second, said nothing but just looked at me. Jonas remained seated. I placed my hand on his. It wasn't a strong grip, nor was it trembling. It was just the quiet reassurance I wished someone had given me a long, long time ago. We left the conference room. A light rain had begun to fall. The first drizzle of autumn. I tilted my face to the sky, letting the drops land on my hair on my shoulders. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt clear as the light that streamed through the office window when I first walked in. I had said what I needed to say, and they finally had listened, even if it was just for once, even if there was nothing left to save. I never expected my life to become a morality tale for the masses. I thought I was just a retired old teacher destined to live quietly by a window knitting scarves and waiting for holiday texts. But somehow I became the woman in the headlines, a mother disowned, and the will that fought back. That headline was splashed across the front page of the Weekly Ledger the morning after the reading. Below it was a blurry photo clipped from the birthday video Jonas had posted, a picture of me, holding the empty passbook. My expression not sad, not angry, just blank as glass. I don't remember who took that picture, but I knew it would follow me for a long time, longer than any family photo ever had. I heard about Caleb first from Dorothy. She brought me the physical paper still smelling of ink. They dug up his entire internal review file at the insurance company, she said. Turns out he's had issues with fund management for a while. Mismatched reports, irregular salary hikes. After that recording came out, the board decided to suspend him pending further investigation. I just nodded. I felt no relief, no pity. I thought of the day Caleb had cried in front of me after being bullied in middle school. I remembered telling him I will always be on your side. I didn't regret saying it then. But I was on a different side now. The next news was about Vanessa. Social media erupted with leaked internal emails and documents from an insurance project she was managing. Several home insurance policies had been approved despite lacking financial verification. A few commission payments were suspected of being irregular gratuities. Her company issued a statement. The system access of employee Vanessa Quinn has been temporarily suspended pending the results of an internal audit. The press called it the domino effect from an empty savings passbook. Social media was crueler. I saw a photo of her in a gray pantsuit turned into a meme. The caption read, "Commits insurance fraud, but still has time to print a fake passbook for her mother-in-law." I didn't share it. I didn't save it. But I stared at it longer than I thought I would. Talia was the last one I heard about. An old friend from my high school days texted me. My daughter told me Talia lost her study abroad scholarship. The school reviewed her ethics file after the birthday video went viral. I wasn't surprised, but I still felt my heart sink. Talia was only 16. 16 after all. I thought back to when I used to hold her as a baby, the way she would cling to me whenever I left after a day of babysitting. And then I saw a short clip on TikTok, an excerpt from the birthday video showing Talia laughing loudly as I opened the gift box, her face alight with glee. The clip was in slow motion set to a sad piano track. The caption read, "Empty passbook, empty soul, over 1 million views." I turned off the screen. I sat in silence. I didn't cry, but I placed my hand on my chest where the heart of a mother used to be. And Jonas, he didn't go to school for 2 days after the meeting at the law office. I was worried, but I didn't call. I didn't want to put him in a difficult position. 3 days later, I received an email. It was from an anonymous address with only a subject line, "I'm still here." The message read, I was invited to do a TV interview. They wanted me to talk about the video about you, about why I did it. I refused. A small newspaper asked for an email interview. I gave them only one sentence. I didn't need a reward. I just needed my grandmother to know that someone was listening. I don't know what my life will be like now, but I know that if you don't stand on the right side, you're just a shadow. And you were never a shadow, Grandma. I read it again and again. Each word felt like it was being carved by hand into my heart. That evening, Dorothy brought over a bottle of cider and 2 glasses. She clinked her glass against mine, her voice as deep and steady as an old hymn. Justice doesn't come from a courtroom. It comes when people can no longer run from themselves. I didn't answer. I just thought if Silas were still alive, he would have put on a jazz record, pulled me onto the porch and said, "See, you were never as weak as you thought." But he was gone, and I had learned to stand up on my own. The next morning, I took out all my old letters. A letter from Caleb in high school, apologizing for bad grades. A thank you note from Vanessa after the wedding. A drawing from Talia in 1st grade depicting me as a fairy godmother with silver hair. I gathered them all. I wrapped them in newspaper. I placed them in a cardboard box. On the lid I wrote the past, no longer valid. Then I took it out to the garage. And I closed the lid. It took me exactly 3 weeks to disappear from the system. Not the dramatic kind of disappearance you see in television dramas where someone burns a passport and changes their name by firelight. I did nothing illegal. I just quietly withdrew. I sold the house through a small real estate office where a young agent called me Mrs. Quinn with a smile free of judgment. He didn't ask why I was leaving. He just asked how quickly I wanted to close. I said, "As soon as possible, son." The assets were transferred into a trust that Emery had helped me set up. The name on the new documents was Clara Hart. I didn't choose the name because it had any special meaning. I chose it because it carried no memories. Dorothy moved with me. She sold her small ground-floor apartment in the retirement community without a second thought. My daughter already deleted me from her life with a 3-sentence email. Now I'm choosing to delete myself from my old memories before she gets the chance to do it again," she said as she taped up the last cardboard box. We arrived in Ashland on an early winter morning. It was a small, quiet town, far enough away that I wouldn't accidentally run into anyone from my past. Our new house had a red roof, a white picket fence, and a garden that wasn't yet thriving but had rich, dark soil. An old lemon tree stood in the corner of the yard, its branches leaning toward the neighbor's fence, as if apologizing for growing old. I didn't bring much. An old wooden chest my mother's tea said, a vintage mailbox Silas had built by hand, and a few cookbooks I'd never fully used. Every morning Dorothy would wake up before me to water the plants and tend to her okra. She liked okra because it was tough but with a sweet finish. I didn't argue, though. I'd never found okra to be sweet. Perhaps we had both lived long enough to understand everything has its tough parts and its tender parts. I started learning piano again. There was an old upright in a nearby abandoned church. The groundskeeper let me use it for a few hours each week. My fingers were no longer nimble, but the sound was the same steady, simple kneading, no audience. Once a month I wrote a letter by hand to Jonas. No emails, no phone calls, just white paper, black ink, careful script, and a stamped envelope. In the first letter I wrote, "My dearest Jonas, I burned the bottom of an almond cake today, but Dorothy ate it all anyway. She said the top was still sweet enough. Maybe life is like that. The burnt parts still leave behind a certain fragrance. Thank you for not turning your back on the light. Love, Grandma." I didn't expect a reply, and I never received one. But every time I wrote, I felt like I was sending out a piece of gratitude that no one else in the world deserved anymore. I knew Jonas read them. Dorothy got a message from a friend of a neighbor's sister or something like that, who said the boy kept a small wooden box on his desk, carefully locked. Each letter was protected in a plastic sleeve numbered and labeled. The first one was labeled, "Not all old people are useless. Some are just treasure hidden in the wrong place." I sat for a long time when I heard that. I said nothing. But my hand gripped the edge of the table as if I were afraid the emotion would escape my body and cling to the air. We lived simply. Tea in the morning, the radio in the afternoon, and sometimes a game of tic-tac-toe on a scrap of paper. Dorothy always won. I always pretended to be angry. Whenever it rained, we would sit on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the water drip from the old roof tiles into the gutter. Each drop was a sigh I had once held back. Now I let them all go with the rain. I still haven't forgiven them. I don't think I have to. Forgiveness is a choice, not an obligation. But I have let go, and that for me is enough. I no longer live in the city that once called me mother. But I am not running away either. I was just looking for a new place to begin again. A place where no one would call me a burden, a nuisance, or a shadow of what I used to be. I am Clara Hart. I was once Aurelia Quinn, and I am a mother, a grandmother, and a woman who has learned to choose the place where she will be remembered for the last time. Ashland has short summers, not humid like in Lakewood. The sun here doesn't beat down on your head as if to remind you that you're growing old. It just spreads out light and airy like a thin tablecloth on a windowsill. The old lemon tree in the garden finally bore fruit, small pale yellow, with a rough rind but a sharp, intense fragrance when you touched it. Dorothy said, "You should make marmalade. End-of-season lemons always have the strongest flavor." I laughed. I think I'm an end-of-season person myself. I just don't know if my flavor is still strong enough. We didn't talk about the past much anymore. Some things don't need to be revisited, not because you've forgotten, but because they've been put away in a different mental drawer, one you don't open often, but you know is still there. Every month I still wrote a letter to Jonas. I didn't use a phone, no email. I didn't need to know if he replied or where the letters would end up if he one day moved away. But I still wrote. Because I believe that when someone has truly seen you for who you are, that connection can't be erased. In my most recent letter, I wrote, "My dearest Jonas, if you ever come one day, don't knock. Just stand there outside the white picket fence. If I'm still alive, I'll know. If I'm gone, the rose bush by the window will still be blooming, as if answering for me. I love you. Not because you are my grandson, but because you were the only one in our family who chose to stand in the light while everyone else held a candle and still called it dark." I folded the letter, put it in an envelope, licked the stamp, and left it on the table. I would mail it at the post office tomorrow morning. Dorothy had already baked blueberry scones for me to take along. She was always thoughtful like that. That day came sooner than I expected. One Saturday morning, the sun fell across the porch eaves like a thin ribbon. I was sitting and embroidering, my eyes starting to tire, when I saw a figure standing outside the white picket fence. I didn't go out. I didn't open the door. I just gently pulled the curtain aside the same way Silas used to do whenever someone knocked on a Sunday morning. The person stood with his back, straight hands in his pockets, a backpack slung over one shoulder, a charcoal-colored hoodie, dark jeans, brown hair falling over his forehead. It was still Jonas, taller now, broader in the shoulders, but he was the same boy whose hand I used to hold on our walks to the library. He stood there, just as I had written, not knocking, not entering, just standing still as if his presence alone were a greeting. I saw his eyes look up toward my window. I wasn't sure if he could see me, but I knew he knew I was there. And then Jonas smiled, not a bright smile, not a forced one. It was the smile of someone who knows that everything that needed to be done has been done. He stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked away. No hurry, no looking back. I didn't cry, but I placed my hand on my chest. It felt light, warm, as if someone had just reset the rhythm of a heart that had beaten out of time for too long. That afternoon I went into the garden, picked a few lemons, and sat down to dry the peels. I didn't make marmalade. I just wanted to keep the scent. Something inside me said, you don't always have to taste something to remember it. Some things you only need to smell once to live on for a lifetime. I don't know if Jonas will come back. Maybe next year. Maybe next month when he has a break from school. But I believe he will remember. And maybe later on, when he's grown, he'll tell someone. My grandmother used to write me a letter every month. They didn't teach me what to do. They just reminded me that I was seen and that I was loved. I think that's enough. This story doesn't have a Hollywood happy ending. There is no tearful reunion, no public apology. But it has an old woman living in a red-roofed house in Ashland who waters her okra every morning and folds a letter every afternoon. It has a boy who chose to stand on the right side, even if it meant standing against his own parents. And it has a mailbox empty if you look from the outside, but filled with things no one thinks about anymore: compassion, respect, and a memory that was never rewritten. If you're still here, after all, that I suspect you might be carrying something unspoken inside you. Maybe it's a wound, maybe it's a silence. Maybe it's a memory you deliberately fold away every time the wind blows. I am not a brave person. I was silent for many years. I gave in, I endured, I told myself. They're young, they're busy, I shouldn't ask for too much. And each of those don't ask for too much. Moments piled up like stones on my self-respect, until one day I no longer knew who I was in my own story. If there is one thing I've learned from this journey, it's this: respect is never a default gift for being a mother or a grandmother. It is something you can lose if you don't speak up. I used to dream of a different ending, of remorse, of a hug in the kitchen of my son saying I was wrong. But life isn't a heartwarming TV movie on a Saturday night. Real life has sharper edges, and because it's sharp, every act of kindness holds even more value. I want to say a few words to the older women reading this. If you are being left behind in your own family, not with harsh words, but with intentional busyness, with polite compliments, with an indifference wrapped in obligation. Please believe me, you are not crazy for feeling hurt. You are not wrong for feeling forgotten. You have the right to say no, the right to rewrite your will, the right to save the best parts for yourself, even if the people you love are the ones who hurt you the most. And if anyone ever tells you you're old, you should know your place. I just want to send back one reply: I'm old, so I'm done being quiet. If my story touched something in you, share it. You don't have to tell the details. Just say I understand, or I've been there, or even simpler, I'm still here. Leave a comment, not just for me, but so that other women like you can find each other in a world that keeps trying to tell us we should step back. I'm not stepping back, and I hope after reading this you won't either. Clara Hart, formerly a mother named Aurelia Quinn and still learning to be herself. Have you ever been in a situation like Aurelia's? If so, what did you do, or what do you wish you had done differently? Leave a comment below, not just to share, but to let others who are suffering know they are not alone. You are still here, and that is enough.